So, hi, how are you? Thanks for taking a time to talk with us.
Well, thank you for inviting me to be with you, talking with, which is a great pleasure. And we are very keen to play in Poland again.
Yes, we can't wait. Do you have any nice memories with our country?
Well, in fact, we play in Katowice. Katowice.
Katowice.
How to Katowice. Yeah, it's hard for me to spell this. Well, yes. Well, in fact, we play in a very good, very nice festival called Summer Fog. And for my surprise, when I arrived, I was an architect. And when we arrived in that venue, I saw, wow, this is amazing venue, just because the architecture of this spodek was fantastic. So this was my first impression of Poland. In fact, was my first time in Poland. And I really enjoyed to be in that space. And also the festival was so great, so very well organized. I could see one of my main gurus, well, my main artist of all time, which is Nicka Masona of Pink Floyd. He played with Source of Secret, which for me is the best post Pink Floyd work for me, because I'm a big fan of the early Pink Floyd. So this is another thing. And also the organizer of the festival, they are so great. So it was, we all have, I have only amazing memories. And also walking Katowice, near the hotel, I felt a very nice vibe in the town. At least in that part we were, it was a very nice to meet the people there. To see, I saw a kind of happiness in that street, in that area. So I think I was very touched by the that stay in Poland.
Mhm. So, actually, I'm asking about that at the end of the interview. But if you start with your concert in Poland, maybe you could invite your fans for the concert right now.
Would like me to invite the people to the concert?
Yeah, some special message for Polish fans.
Well, we are very keen to be back to Poland. It will be the second time this current lineup will be in Poland, and we have 4 dates. I think 4 shows. Well, I need to I don't remember all the dates, but I know that we play in Warsaw. We're going to play in Katowice again, and 2 more cities. And we are expecting that you enjoy this. This time we'll be playing a very full show of this lineup. So we hope we will be there and enjoy.
Okay, so your fans are invited. And now I would like to ask a little bit more about your music experience. And actually, I would like to start from the beginning, because I would like to ask what motivated you to start your music career.
Well, as you know, I was born in Brazil, but I am from an Italian family, and I work in UK. So I have 3 different things. But in Brazil, I started very early, not very early, but in my teenager times, as playing acoustic guitar. I have a teacher, and then I switched to classical guitar when I was 16, about 16 to 18, and I formed my first band, not a classical guitar band, but I formed my first band in Brazil when I was 18. So at that time, I was a huge fan of progressive rock music. And 2 bands were my favorite, 3 bands, I can say. Pink Floyd, the early Pink Floyd, The Soft Machine, and Gong. These 3 bands are my main things, apart from the Beatles, which is a different universe. And then I started doing music in university, in the college. As I told you, I was formed as an architect. But I play a lot of music in the architectural school, because we think, well, music is a kind of architecture also. Is a kind of creating 3D spaces with sounds. And that's it. I started doing this Brazilian bands until I became a professional in music. I was not very early as a professional. I became professional around 25. And then I formed a Brazilian band. And from that time, I was very connected to the psychedelic and progressive music in Brazil. So from there, my music started spreading. Sometimes at that time was very hard because we had to write letters to be connected with the magazines everywhere. But when the internet came around 1995, 1996, at that time I started spreading my music through many different areas on the internet. It was more simple. And also at that time I was a connection with David Allen of Gong, because I met David in the late 80s. So I keep in touch with the Gong family since this early beginning, since the late 80s with David, when David Allen came back from Australia to be back in the UK. And after this relationship with David Allen, at some point I say, well, if you need a guitarist to play with Gong, I can join you. And he said, well, I'm very keen to do a glissando orchestra. Glissando is a technique I play the guitar with like a slide. Is a classic Gong sound. And David Allen say, well, we already have a lineup for this next tour, but I will invite you in the future. And that's it. In 2011, I joined Gong for a tour, for a big tour. It was the last David Allen tour, not a world tour, but in Europe, and we played Japan also. And from there, I stay a member of Gong since this time, since 2011. And then I keep, of course, I keep my Brazilian stuff, because I divide my time in UK and São Paulo in Brazil, where I lived. But so I don't know exactly where I live now, because or we are touring, or I have few times in UK and São Paulo. But yes, this is my life from the last 10 years maybe.
But actually, Gong is not the only one project you're working at the same time. So I'm wondering, what challenges you need to meet on your path to work on a few projects at the same time?
Well, in fact, since I formed my first band, because when you do music with different people, it's not hard, but you have to be democratic. So I think I'm a composer. Of course, I compose my music, but when you are playing in a band, I prefer that the band interacts with all the material, not having someone that compose. Of course, I can write a lyrics, for example, but when you compose together, or when you interact together, the band becomes more a band. So what happens? Since my first band, I had a band, so the music was a collective creation between. It was a trio, and the other music that is not agreed of everybody, we put aside to a different project. So this should be more folk, or I don't know, this should be more world music, and then I put aside or for my solo project, or to have different people working. So this is, I think nowadays, I know even in Gong, each of us has different projects, because we have a lot of ideas, a lot of things happening all the time, and you cannot put all in one band. But you know how the band can sound, and then you direct the type of music you compose or you create collectively to a project. So this is what I think about having different projects, because you can express yourself in different areas. For example, Carlos Torabi of Gong is doing now a solo tour with his third album, I think, third solo album. I recorded a solo album recently, 2 years ago also. So I think is a kind of you have space to do things. And now I think it's much more simple, because, for example, for recording a piece of music, you don't need a big studio anymore. You can do it in your bedroom, anywhere, in a computer, or traveling. So it's much easier to create. It's hard to compose original music, but it's easy to record and register the music. So this is why we have a lot of projects.
And about projects with Gong, I'm wondering, how would you describe the evolution of Gong's sounds for years, and especially since you joined them?
Well, in fact, Gong it was like a vision of David Allen. This thing he described in his books or talk with him when we met him. He was an Australian that came from Melbourne, I think Melbourne from Australia, and arrived in UK in the early 60s. And at the time, he was a bit older than the other rock musician. He was around 5 years older than the other musician of Soft Machine, for example. And he was very influenced by jazz music in the early 60s. For example, David Allen, one of his main influence was Sun Ra, for example, the Sun Ra orchestra of the American Sun Ra, which mix of kind of free jazz with electronic music and mythology of a planet, or in case of Sun Ra, he came from Saturn. He has a lot of mythologies involving black people, everything. And David Allen had this vision about the Gong mythology, a bit inspired by books by, for example, The Lord of the Rings, maybe. He has a lot of ideas of small pixies or beings that habitated the earth. And so he wrote a lot of poetry in the beginning of Gong, based on these fantastic ideas. And musically, I think David was a kind of channel for being people around him, musicians. He make all the musicians around him play their best. So I think David Allen has a kind of idea to channelize musical ideas of other peoples and create a gong. I think in the 70s, in the early 70s, which was the gong classical period, Gong was surrounded by one of those best musicians of rock and jazz music in UK and also in France. And there's a lot of composition that were created collectively. They jam a music, they jam it, and David Allen wrote the lyrics, or put some of his ideas, or try to make it more a concept of that music. So I think that the three main albums of Gong, the trilogy, which was the time, was basically this idea of having people they don't have ego involved. For example, if you see the Gong trilogy, none of the musician has their own name. They all have nicknames, because to try to dissolve the ego of this composition. The composition is made by everybody. So this is basically a principle of free jazz, of a jazz music, which the musician came and play freely, which was a very popular idea in music in the 60s, even in the electronic music or contemporary music. For example, Penderecki is one of the composer, I think the Polish composer, and Ligeti is a Romanian. All these contemporary composers, they create a lot of this creating music with the free ideas of everybody, like improvisations. So I think David Allen built this, and this is why we continued this kind of concept of Gong, because it was a free concept. Even if the music is not the same as the music they did in the 70s, the music we do now is follow the same principles, but carrying our own experience, individual music experience of each musician. So that's it. I think this is why Gong can continue until now.
About experience, what experience did you gain from touring with Gong?
Well, for me, I say that because of David Allen, I became a musician when I was my 16, because I was really involved by the idea of the musical idea, and also the freedom, the politics, the way how you look at the world. And this influenced me a lot when I was forming myself in late teenager to adult life of 16, 17, 18. So I think this I live with this Gong ideology or philosophy since I was my 20s. And what happens being part of Gong, what changed in my life? Well, changed a lot. It's funny because I joined Gong, it was when I wasn't a teenager anymore. I was much older, and was a very good thing, because for me, everything I read during during 30 years of my life, I read all the articles in magazine, reviews, books, and records. And then when I first time I toured with Gong in 2012, I could feel and see all this. Everything I read, I saw these things in person. For example, the guy that made a film with David Allen doing the soundtrack in the 70s, 71, he came to a gig in Paris. Do you know the first drummer that played with Gong in 1971 also came to a gig. So I met all these people that I read in all these magazines all my life. So it was a very how can I explain? But it was one amazing experience to live these things that you read for more than 30 years. And another thing that was great was travel a lot, because I love to travel. And then playing music. Although when you are touring, you don't feel the place much, but you can have an idea of the environment, and I love this. This is one of the points I really like is traveling.
So,
And
which country do you like visiting the most?
oh, every country has their good things. I will not say bad things, because bad things we have everywhere. But I love to be in France, which is nice and it's more close to my culture. And Scandinavia is always good because we play in very nice venues. We tour a lot in Germany, where we have, I think, after UK, Germany is our second market. I wish to tour more in Italy because I have my ancestry in Italy, but it's more hard to play in Italy. But I feel like home when I play in Italy, because here in São Paulo, we have the biggest Italian community outside Italy. So being in Italy is like if I stay in São Paulo. And of course, in UK, it's different, because UK is the main, I think is our main not market, I can say, but is the place where the followers, the fans of Gong, they came to support the band every time. So this, when we play in UK, it's like a big family gathering, because we meet all the people. There are some good fans and friends that when we are touring in UK, they take holidays and go with the band. When the band is playing different towns, different cities, they come to see us. So it's very special. But of course, for example, we played in China once. Was a completely amazing experience. It's completely different. China is in the continent. It was a very unique experience. Gong playing in Brazil, in South America. We play in Chile, not in the rest of the country. In Brazil, as is my hometown, I have a lot of connections here. Every time Gong comes to play in Brazil, it's like it's like a Gong is local here, because we have a lot of connections here and with people. So it's special to play in São Paulo. Poland, we think will be one highlight of this next tour, because we are very keen to do this tour in passing through Poland.
I'm so
I don't know if I
glad.
forgot any country. Well, there's a lot of there's different countries, for example, Holland and Belgium. We played in all these places, all good.
I'm so glad you like touring so much because I know it could be somehow tough sometimes when there's a lot of touring.
Yeah.
So I have
No,
really
it's hard.
So I have really tough question right now for you because I will ask you about your favorite Gong album.
My favorite Gong album. Well, from the if I every Gong album has a different
All
thing.
history, all this discography.
Yeah, but I have two albums that I can say my first is the Camembert Electrique is because I think it was the first album I really had in when I was 16. It was Camembert Electrique. But also my second Gong favorite is Angel's Egg, which was the album that me and my friend we played that album and we say, well, this music has nothing. We don't know any band that is doing music like this. So Angel's Egg is my second. And the current lineup, uh, I don't know which is my favorite, but so far I think it's still The Universe Also Collapse is my favorite of these three albums. Although our last album has a lot of nice stuff, but I think The Universe Also Collapse is still where we felt like a band doing our music. So for me, this is the most important album of this lineup because we solidified our new concept of Gong.
Mhm. So
So yeah,
I thought it will be harder for you to answer that
I'm
question.
good.
Okay, so at the end, I know that now you're touring with Gong, but do you have any projects by yourself or maybe with Gong? Maybe you're preparing album already. What we can expect in the near future from you?
Well, Gong, we are just releasing for this tour. We are releasing an expanded, they call expanded edition or tour edition of the last album, which we included some live tracks. So we are releasing this in the first day of the Europe, I think the American tour or Europe, I think the American, because we go to US first. And this is with Gong now. And then we are going to the studio to record another album, Gong album, studio album, which will be in January, February. We are composing and probably in February we go to studio and then we will record it our third, we call the third album like our trilogy. It's not exactly a trilogy, but it will be the third album in this. We are developing this idea of this new Gong. So we want to release this album next year, probably in the autumn. And yeah, this is the plans of Gong. We have a tour in America now in September in US especially, and then we probably come back to US and also Canada hopefully in next year in March. And on my side, I'm preparing also composing a new solo album, which I hope to have it finished for the next tour in next year in March. I hope I have it finished, but it's more complicated because I don't have much time to do my own stuff because it's a constantly touring or work for Gong, so it's more hard. But I started composing my music, and I have my friends that will play with me. And my Brazilian band called Violeta de Outono. It's like Autumn Violet is the name of the band I have from since the mid-80s. We release a lot of albums and now we are just doing interviews or releasing the albums in like remix or remaster editions. It's hard when you have a band that is original band and you record a lot of albums and then you became famous or not famous, but you became recognized by one or two albums. Then it's hard. Everything that you do, it doesn't matter because people want to hear that original stuff. So this is what we are doing. We are normally sometime when we have we don't tour in Brazil, but sometime when we have a nice gig to play, we come and play some like a retrospective or something of our music.
So of course, fingers crossed for your whole project, because I can tell you it's a lot. Your
It's a
fans
lot,
won't
a
be
lot.
disappointed for sure.
No, yeah.
So one more time, thank you so much for this conversation. To have time to talk with us, and we'll see you at the concert.
Oh, thank you. Are you coming to Warsaw concert?
I hope so.
Oh, yeah. Please come. It'd be nice to meet. Well, it'd be nice to meet you all because I really enjoyed to be in Poland. I think it would be great.